The alarm was already screaming when Jake Carter realized the cameras were lying to him. Every screen on the control room wall showed the same thing. 10 different cell blocks. 10 different angles. 10 inmates who were supposed to be locked down in the safest prison in America. But on every screen, each inmate was standing in the doorway of his cell. They were not inside. They were not behind the bars. They were right at the edge, like the line between caged and free did not matter anymore. Jake stared, his stomach twisting as he realized something was very, very wrong. Red emergency lights flashed over their faces. Sirens wailed through the steel halls of Blackridge Federal Penitentiary. Somewhere nearby, heavy doors slammed and guards shouted orders Jake could not quite hear. On camera 3, inmate number 10, Marcus Red Daly, smiled up at the lens. His eyes were calm, like he had been waiting for this night his whole life. On camera 7, inmate number 6, a tall man called the Preacher, pressed his hands together like he was praying for the souls of whoever stood in his way. On camera 1, inmate number 1, the most dangerous of them all, was doing something that made Jake's heart freeze. The man did not move. He only stared. He stared straight into the camera, straight into the control room, straight at Jake, like he could see through the glass and wires and miles of cable. Somewhere below, a slow, heavy clank echoed through the walls. One cell door, then another, like a metal drumbeat marching closer. Jake's headset crackled. Control, this is Unit C. We've lost power to the locks. They're cycling. Repeat, the top 10 are... The voice cut off in a burst of static. The screens flickered. The words override accepted flashed in angry red text across every monitor. Jake looked from screen to screen, his breath stuck in his throat. An ice-cold thought slid through his mind. Someone inside this prison is controlling the system. And it's not us. The inmates began to step forward out of their cells, into the halls. He grabbed the radio with shaking hands. Warden Miller, he said, his voice cracking, they're out. The top 10, they're loose. The lights went completely black. Only the glow from the screens remained. On them, 10 of the most dangerous men in the U.S. prison system turned in the same instant. Not toward the guards, not toward the doors, but toward the cameras, as if they all knew exactly where Jake was. Someone was at the control room door. He heard the click of the lock. Then the handle slowly began to turn. Earlier that morning, Jake Carter thought the scariest thing he would face today was the smell. He stepped out of the prison van and into the gray courtyard of Blackridge Federal Penitentiary, hugging his camera bag close to his chest. The air smelled like rain, metal, and bleach. Huge concrete walls towered over him, topped with razor wire that shimmered under a cloudy sky. A guard gate buzzed open, and a woman in a dark suit strode toward him. She had short brown hair, sharp eyes, and a badge that said Warden Miller. "You Jake Carter?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," Jake said. His voice sounded too small in this giant place. "From Channel 9. I'm here to film the documentary." He felt silly saying the title out loud here, with towers and rifles watching him. "The top 10 most dangerous inmates in the U.S. prison system," Warden Miller finished for him. Her mouth twitched, like she didn't know if she wanted to smile or spit. "You picked one hell of a topic." Jake gave a nervous laugh. "People like countdowns," he said. "People like feeling scared while they sit safe on their couches," the warden replied. "But this isn't a movie. These men really did the things you read in your notes. Don't forget that." "I won't," Jake said. He almost added I can handle it, but then 2 tower guards turned their rifles slightly, and he decided to keep quiet. Inside, the prison smelled stronger. The walls were painted a sad, peeling gray. Every few seconds, a heavy door buzzed or slammed. Somewhere, a voice shouted, and another voice shouted louder. Warden Miller walked fast, and Jake had to hurry to keep up. "You're here because the Bureau thinks this documentary will help people understand why we need places like Blackridge," she said. "But you will follow my rules, or you'll be on the next van back to town. Clear?" "Clear," Jake said. "No inmate contact without a barrier," she went on. "You don't pass anything to them. You don't take anything from them. You don't tell them your full name, your address, or what school you went to in 3rd grade. They will use anything you give them. Got it, Jake said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. They passed a row of cells where men in orange jumpsuits sat on metal bunks, staring out from behind bars. These were not the famous ones, not the top 10, but even they made Jake's skin crawl. He could feel their eyes following him, weighing him, judging him as he walked by with his camera bag. A tall guard with a mustache waited by a secure door. His name tag said Ramirez. "This is Officer Ramirez," the warden said. "He'll be your escort all day. You do what he says." Ramirez shook Jake's hand with a grip like a steel clamp. "Ever been inside a place like this before, Mr. TV?" he asked. "No," Jake admitted. Ramirez gave a short, humorless laugh. "You will not forget today." His tone made it sound less like a promise and more like a warning. They went through 3 more sets of buzzing doors until they reached a long hallway lined with cameras and thick glass. A sign on the wall read, Tier X, Extreme Risk Inmates. The air felt heavier here, like the building itself was holding its breath. "These are your stars," Warden Miller said quietly. "The top 10. Jake swallowed. His camera suddenly felt heavier in his hands. "Why are they all here?" he asked. "I mean, in the same place?" Warden Miller's eyes hardened. "They weren't supposed to be," she said. "Over the years, every time we had an inmate who was too dangerous, too smart, too violent for regular maximum security, they moved him here. Federal level. Let Blackridge deal with it." "So this is like the worst of the worst?" Jake asked. Ramirez nodded. If hell had a VIP section, these guys would be in it. A shiver ran down Jake's spine, even though the hallway felt warm. Jake set up his camera on its tripod, pointing down the long glass wall that held back Tier 10. On the other side, he saw only heavy steel doors, each with a small square window. The sound of his tripod legs clicking open seemed too loud in the quiet hall. "We'll go in order," Warden Miller said. "You wanted a countdown, right?" Jake nodded. "Number 10 to number 1. "Then we start with Marcus Red Daly," she said. "Cell X10. They walked down the hall. Ramirez swiped his key card, and a thick metal shutter slid up over the first window. Behind the glass, a man sat on his bunk, his wrists resting calmly on his knees. He had red hair, freckles, and eyes that were too still. He looked like he could be someone's friendly uncle, not a man the guards called Red. He looked up and saw them. Slowly, a smile spread across his face. "Morning, Warden," he said through the speaker. His voice was smooth, almost gentle. "You brought a guest." "This is Mr. Carter," Warden Miller said. "He's doing a news piece." "Top 10 list," Jake said before he could stop himself. "Why you're number 10? Red laughed softly. "Always nice to be on a list," he said. "Even this one." Jake cleared his throat. "Why do they call you Red?" he asked. Red tilted his head, the smile never leaving his lips. "Isn't it obvious?" he asked. "My hair." Ramirez shifted his weight. Jake felt tension in the air, like a rubber band pulled too tight. Red's eyes slid from Jake to the warden. "You really think a camera can keep you safe today?" he asked. Jake blinked. "What do you mean?" Red just smiled. "You'll see," he whispered. The warden lowered the shutter. The sound made Jake flinch. "Don't let him get in your head," Ramirez said. "His favorite game is making people nervous." "It worked," Jake muttered. They moved on. Inmate number 9 was a huge man called Tommy Knox, a former gang enforcer who once ran an entire prison yard like a king. He paced his cell like a caged bear, eyes sharp and restless. When he saw the camera, he flexed his hands, his knuckles scarred from too many fights. "Film this," Tommy said. He slammed his fists into the wall, hard enough that the glass vibrated under Jake's fingers. "Cut the sound," Warden Miller ordered, and Ramirez flipped a switch. Tommy's shouting became a silent storm, his mouth twisting into curses Jake could only guess at. Inmate number 8 was Lewis Crane, thin and neat, with tiny glasses and a calm smile. The file said he had never raised his voice in public, but he planned crimes on a scale that made cities panic. Banks, hospitals, whole traffic systems, he had hacked and sabotaged them all from cheap laptops and hidden phones. "Hello," Crane said politely. Do people still watch television? I thought everyone just stared at their phones now. Jake tried to ask him questions, but Crane seemed more interested in Jake's camera, his badge, the way his fingers moved. Your hands shake a little, Crane said quietly. You nervous? You should be. The simple, calm way he said it made Jake even more uneasy. It felt less like a threat and more like a fact he had already accepted. By the time they reached inmate number 7, Jake felt like his nerves were thin wires, ready to snap. Number 7 was Darius Cole, a tall man with long, braided hair and eyes that never seemed to blink. The guards called him the Prophet because he spoke in strange, calm sentences about fate and destiny and the day the doors forget to close. I saw you in a dream, Darius said when he saw Jake. You were holding a small black eye. Jake looked down at his camera. He did not like this at all. What happens in the dream? He asked. Darius smiled slowly. Everyone lets something out they can't put back in, he said. And the whole world watches. Enough, Warden Miller said, nodding to Ramirez. The shutter came down with a heavy clang. As they walked away, Jake's heart was pounding. Darius's words clung to his mind like smoke he couldn't wave off. Are they always like this? Jake asked quietly as they walked. Talking in riddles? Sometimes they're worse, Ramirez said. You're getting the polite version. They like new people. They took a break in a small staff room near the end of the tier. The coffee tasted burned, but Jake drank it anyway. His hands were still shaking. Why do they scare you so much? He asked Ramirez. You have guns, locks, cameras, all the guards. Ramirez stared into his coffee cup for a moment before answering. Guns jam, he said. Locks break. Cameras stop working. People make mistakes. But men like the ones on Tier 10? They wait. They watch. They don't need you to slip up today. They can wait 10 years for 1 second of chance. Jake listened in silence, feeling that 1 second of chance creeping closer, even if he didn't fully understand how. Warden Miller checked her watch. We still have 6 more on your list, she said to Jake. We'll see 4 today, 2 tomorrow. That should give you enough footage for your first episode. First episode? Jake asked. Isn't that what you said? She replied. A series. Part 1, Part 2. People love that. Jake nodded faintly. He had pitched it like that in his meeting. Blackridge, the top 10. It had sounded exciting back then. Now it sounded stupid. They returned to the hallway. Inmate number 6, Elias Moore, was the one they called the preacher. He wore glasses and kept his cell neat, with books lined up like tiny soldiers on a shelf. He had once run a strange, violent group that pretended to be a church. The file said his followers would have done anything he asked. When the shutter rose, Elias was already standing by the glass, hands folded like he was in prayer. Welcome to my chapel, he said softly. Jake swallowed. Do you, know why you're on this list? He asked. Elias smiled. Because you people love monsters, he said. You love to count them. 10 worst this, 5 scariest that. You pretend you are afraid, but really you enjoy it. Jake felt heat rise in his face. That's not true, he said. We want people to understand how dangerous we are? Elias asked. Or how dangerous you are? He leaned closer, his eyes bright behind his glasses. Warden, he said, not looking away from Jake. What time is it? The warden frowned. Almost 4, she said. Elias nodded slowly. Then you have about 4 hours, he said. After that, the counting will end and the real game will begin. What are you talking about? Warden Miller asked. But Elias stepped back, lifted one of his books, and turned his back on them. Interview's over, he said quietly. Back in the hallway, Ramirez muttered. He's trying to mess with you. Is he? Jake asked. Because it feels like they all know something we don't. His skin prickled as he said it. The air around Tier 10 felt heavier, like the building itself was listening. The warden's radio crackled on her belt. Control to warden, a voice said. We've got some weird power readings on Tier 10. Might be a sensor glitch, but you might want to take a look. Warden Miller pressed the button. I'm on Tier 10 right now, she said. Everything looks normal. Copy that, the voice replied. Just keep an eye on it. We've had a few random surges today. Jake looked up at the nearby security camera, its small red light blinking. For the first time, he wondered who else was watching them besides the guards. They moved on to the next inmate, but the air felt different now. Heavier. As the interviews for the day wrapped up and Jake packed up his camera, the prison lights flickered once, like the whole building had blinked. For a moment, the hallway dimmed, then returned to normal. The moment was small, but it didn't feel small. Ramirez frowned and looked up at the ceiling. Storm coming? Jake asked, trying to lighten the mood. There's no storm on the forecast, Ramirez said. Must be something else. They were wrong. It wasn't a storm outside. It was something inside the prison, waking up. That night, Jake sat alone in the small control room the staff had given him to review his footage. Rows of monitors showed different parts of the prison: yards, halls, cell doors, and the long, quiet row of Tier 10. He played back his interviews, checking sound levels and angles. Each inmate's face stared back at him from the screen, calm and dangerous in different ways. Jake scrubbed through the footage, pausing whenever a detail made his skin crawl. He tried to tell himself this was just work, just another story. He paused on Elias, the preacher, more. The man's eyes seemed to look straight through the lens. On the screen, Elias said, "After that, the counting will end and the real game will begin." Jake leaned back in his chair, that line echoing in his head. He checked the time in the corner of the monitor. 7:58 p.m. He remembered Warden Miller saying shift change was at 8 o'clock. The prison would go from daytime buzz to nighttime hush. Fewer staff, fewer eyes. The lights flickered again. This time, they stayed dim, like the power was struggling to hold on. Shadows stretched longer across the floor. Jake leaned forward, staring at the screens, trying to convince himself it was nothing. On one of the monitors, he saw Marcus read Daly lying on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. On another, Tommy Knox paced like always. On another, Louis Crane sat at his desk, writing in a notebook. All normal. All calm. Jake let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Then every screen in the control room blinked. For 1 second, they showed static, wild black and white snow. For the next second, they went completely black.